The rhythmic rumble of the New York subway car seemed to mock Olivia Parker's exhaustion as she fought to keep her eyes open. The bright screen of her laptop had burned itself into her retinas during the endless night of spreadsheet analysis, and now at 7:15 a.m. she was heading back to the office for another demanding day. Her dark curls, usually styled with precision, had rebelled into waves that matched her current state of mind, somewhat disheveled but still holding on. "Next stop, 42nd Street, Bryant Park," the automated voice announced, its metallic tone merging with the clatter of the train. Olivia blinked hard, trying to focus on the briefing notes she needed to review before her morning meeting. The words blurred together, dancing across the page like mischievous imps determined to evade her comprehension. At 24, she was the youngest member of Henderson and Mitchell Consulting's implementation team. Being an intern at one of Manhattan's most prestigious consulting firms meant proving herself daily, and weakness wasn't an option. But after pulling her third all-nighter this week, even her determination was wavering. The train lurched, and Olivia's head bobbed dangerously. She straightened up, fighting against the weight of exhaustion. The morning crowd had thinned slightly, but the car was still packed with the usual mix of early professionals and night shift workers heading home. Her eyes drifted to the window, where the tunnel lights flashed by like static memories of the caffeine-fueled night she just endured. "Grand Central Station," the announcement crackled. More passengers shuffled in, and Olivia clutched her laptop bag closer, making room for a suited gentleman who took the seat beside her. The familiar scent of coffee and cologne drifted her way, oddly comforting in its normalcy. Her eyelids grew heavier with each passing second. Just 5 minutes, she told herself. 5 minutes to rest her eyes before her stop. The gentle sway of the train became a lullaby, and before she could stop herself, her head tilted sideways, finding an unexpectedly comfortable rest against something warm and solid. In her dreams, Olivia was presenting her analysis to the board with perfect clarity. Her graphs told compelling stories of efficiency gains and cost reductions. The board members nodded approvingly, and her supervisor, Regina Walsh, finally smiled, that elusive smile of satisfaction she'd been chasing for months. 33rd Street Station. The announcement pierced through her dream, and Olivia's eyes snapped open. Horror flooded her system as she realized her head was resting on a stranger's shoulder. Not just any shoulder. A perfectly pressed navy suit covered what felt like a well-maintained physique. She jerked upright, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I am so sorry," she stammered, forcing herself to look at the man whose personal space she had invaded. Her mortification met kind eyes the color of warm honey, and a smile that seemed more amused than annoyed. "No harm done," he replied, his voice carrying a gentle authority that somehow made her feel both more embarrassed and less anxious. "We've all had those days." Before Olivia could formulate a proper response, the train stopped at 28th Street. The man gathered his leather briefcase and stood, revealing his impressive height. "Get some rest," he advised with a knowing look, then disappeared into the stream of departing passengers. Olivia spent the remaining 3 stops to 23rd Street, where Henderson and Mitchell's offices occupied the upper floors of a gleaming high-rise, trying to shake off both her exhaustion and the lingering warmth where her head had rested against the stranger's shoulder. She couldn't forget those kind eyes or the way he'd dismissed her apology with such easy grace. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor gave her time to collect herself. She ducked into the bathroom, attempting to tame her rebellious curls and apply enough concealer to hide the evidence of her sleepless night. The mirror reflected back a young woman trying desperately to look like she belonged in the cutthroat world of corporate consulting. "Looking rough, Parker," came a voice from behind her. Sophie Carter emerged from a stall, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her makeup flawless despite the early hour. "Another all-nighter? You know, working twice as hard doesn't actually make you twice as good." Olivia forced a polite smile. "Good morning to you too, Sophie." Their friendship, formed during their first week as interns, had gradually cooled as Sophie's ambition had taken on a sharper edge. Now, their interactions carried the weight of unspoken competition. "Did you hear about the new system implementation?" Sophie asked, reapplying her signature red lipstick. Apparently the owner of the company is coming himself to oversee everything. Regina's been in meetings all week about it. I've been too busy preparing the transition reports to pay attention to office gossip, Olivia replied, though her interest was piqued. A new system meant new opportunities to prove herself, and having the owner involved raised the stakes considerably. Well, you might want to start paying attention, Sophie smirked. This could change everything for whoever handles it right. The emphasis on right carried clear implications about who Sophie thought that should be. Olivia gathered her things, refusing to engage further. As she headed to her desk, Regina's assistant intercepted her. Morning meeting's been moved. Up conference room A, 5 minutes. Don't be late, it's important. Cursing internally, Olivia rushed to grab her notebook and tablet. She had barely settled into her seat when Regina strode in, followed by several senior partners and a familiar figure that made her heart stop. Navy suit, honey-colored eyes, the same gentle authority, now radiating through the room as Regina introduced him. Everyone, please welcome Anthony Clark, CEO of Clark Tech Solutions. He'll be overseeing the implementation of the new system personally over the next 2 months. The kind stranger from the subway, her unwitting pillow, met her eyes across the conference table. Recognition flickered in his gaze, followed by that same amused smile from earlier. Olivia's hands grew cold as the reality of her situation sank in. She had drooled on the shoulder of the man who would be directing the biggest project of her career. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. The conference room felt smaller than usual as Anthony Clark commanded everyone's attention with his presentation. Olivia tried to focus on his words about system integration and efficiency metrics, but her mind kept drifting back to that morning's subway encounter. She could still feel the phantom warmth of his shoulder against her cheek. The implementation will be divided into 3 phases, Anthony explained, his voice carrying the same gentle authority she remembered. Each department will need a point person to coordinate with my team. His eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly, too briefly, on Olivia before moving on. Regina Walsh straightened in her chair, her silver-streaked bob catching the morning light. I've already selected team leads for each department. Ms. Carter will handle client relations and Ms. Parker will oversee technical integration. Olivia's head snapped up. Beside her, Sophie's sharp intake of breath was barely audible. They had both expected Sophie to get the technical lead. She had seniority after all. Olivia's fingers tightened around her pen, careful to keep her expression neutral despite the sudden flutter in her stomach. Excellent choice, Anthony nodded, and Olivia could have sworn the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Ms. Parker's analysis of our preliminary data was particularly thorough. Heat crept up Olivia's neck. The analysis, that's what had kept her up all night. She'd gone through every specification document twice, determined to understand the system, from its foundation up. She hadn't known it would land on Anthony's desk. After the meeting, Sophie cornered her by the water cooler. Congratulations, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I guess all those late nights paid off. Thanks, Olivia replied carefully. I'm looking forward to working with you on this. She meant it. Despite their growing rivalry, Sophie's expertise in client relations was undeniable. Oh, I'm sure you are. Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. Just like you looked forward to working with James in accounting last year, before he mysteriously requested a transfer? The accusation stung. James had asked for the transfer after his girlfriend became jealous of the time he spent working with Olivia on quarterly reports. It hadn't been Olivia's fault, but office gossip had painted a different picture. That was different, Olivia started, but Sophie was already walking away, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm against the marble floor. Ms. Parker? Anthony's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway of his temporary office, jacket off and sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Do you have a moment? Olivia followed him into the office, hyper-aware of the curious glances from her colleagues. The space usually reserved for visiting executives had been transformed by Anthony's presence. Multiple monitors displayed complex flowcharts, and a worn leather messenger bag slouched against the desk, adding a personal touch to the corporate sterility. Please sit. He gestured to a chair while settling into his own. First, I want to address this morning's incident. Mr. Clark, I am so sorry about that. It was completely unprofessional and He held up a hand, stopping her. Actually, I found it refreshing. Most people in this industry are too caught up in appearances to show any human vulnerability. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Though I admit it's not every day I serve as an impromptu pillow for a stranger on the subway, Olivia felt her face flush. I was reviewing the implementation documents all night. I wanted to be prepared. I noticed. He pulled up a file on his computer. Your analysis caught several potential integration issues we hadn't considered. That's why I supported Regina's decision to make you technical lead. Pride bloomed in her chest, temporarily displacing her embarrassment. Thank you, but I'm sure there were other qualified candidates. False modesty doesn't suit you, Ms. Parker. Own your competence. He leaned forward, his expression turning serious. This project needs someone who sees details others miss, someone willing to put in the work even when it means sleeping on strangers' shoulders. A startled laugh escaped her. I prefer to think of it as extreme dedication to work-life integration. His answering chuckle was warm and genuine. Well, let's focus on system integration for now. I've scheduled individual meetings with all team leads for tomorrow. Your slot is at 2 p.m. I'll be prepared, Olivia promised, standing. And fully awake this time. Shame. I was looking forward to another nap. The words were delivered so deadpan that Olivia almost missed the playful glint in his eyes. She managed to keep her composure until she reached her desk, where reality crashed back in. She had just bantered with the CEO of Clark Tech, the same CEO who would be evaluating her performance over the next 2 months, the same CEO whose shoulder she had used as a pillow mere hours ago. Getting cozy with the boss already? Sophie's voice dripped with sweetness as she passed by, a stack of reports in her arms. How predictable. Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by Regina calling her name. Her supervisor beckoned her into her office, expression unreadable behind her wire-rimmed glasses. Close the door, Regina instructed once Olivia entered. She waited until Olivia sat before speaking again. I'm taking a risk putting you in charge of technical integration. I won't let you down, Olivia said quickly. See that you don't. Regina's fingers drummed against her desk. And be careful around Anthony Clark. He may seem approachable, but he's still the client. Maintain professional boundaries. Of course, Olivia nodded, trying not to think about how she'd already crossed several boundaries before even knowing who he was. Good. Regina turned back to her computer, a clear dismissal. The preliminary timeline is in your inbox. I need it reviewed and on my desk by end of day. Olivia spent the rest of the afternoon buried in project documentation, trying to ignore the occasional glances from colleagues walking past her desk. News of her promotion to technical lead had spread quickly, and she could feel the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders. At 6:30, most of the office had cleared out. Olivia was still at her desk, surrounded by sticky notes and flowcharts, when a coffee cup appeared in her peripheral vision. Thought you might need this, Anthony said, setting the cup down. Though I warn you, another all-nighter might result in more public napping. She accepted the coffee gratefully, noting that it was from the expensive shop around the corner, not the office kitchen. Thank you. I'm just trying to get ahead of tomorrow's meeting. Don't try too hard. I need you sharp for the next 2 months, not burned out by week 1. He paused, considering her for a moment. You know there's a fine line between dedication and self-destruction. Says the CEO working late enough to deliver coffee to interns. She countered before she could stop herself. Touché. He smiled that damned smile again. But I'm not an intern trying to prove myself. Get some rest, Miss Parker. The project will still be here tomorrow. Olivia watched him walk away, his words echoing in her mind. She looked down at the coffee cup and noticed something written on the sleeve. Pillows are not included with this purchase. Despite everything, the pressure, Sophie's hostility, Regina's warning, Olivia found herself smiling. Maybe she wasn't just an intern trying to prove herself. Maybe she was exactly where she needed to be. She packed up her things, leaving, the timeline half finished on her desk. It would have to wait until tomorrow. After all, she had a reputation to maintain as the company's most infamous napper. The next morning arrived with the promise of spring, cherry blossoms dotting the trees outside Henderson and Mitchell's towering office building. Olivia had actually slept the night before, though her dreams had been filled with honey-colored eyes and coffee cup messages. She'd taken a different subway car, just to be safe. Her desk greeted her with an unexpected surprise. A small box of premium chocolates with a note attached. Thought you could use these for the afternoon meetings. Sophie. Olivia stared at the gift, unease creeping through her stomach. Sophie's gestures of friendship had always carried hidden thorns. Those look delicious, Melissa from accounting commented, passing by. Though I'd be careful. Remember what happened to Christina when Sophie gave her those macarons before her big presentation? Olivia remembered all too well. Christina had spent the entire client meeting running to the bathroom. Food poisoning, she'd claimed, but the timing had been suspiciously convenient for Sophie, who'd stepped in to save the day. The chocolates went straight into the trash. Smart move, came Anthony's voice from behind her. He was wearing a charcoal suit today, his tie a deep burgundy that somehow made his eyes seem warmer. Though I have to admire the creativity of office warfare these days. I prefer my battles fought with competence rather than confectionery, Olivia replied, pulling up the project timeline she'd finished that morning. Speaking of which, he settled against the edge of her desk, casual in a way that made several heads turn in their direction. I've been reviewing your technical integration proposal. Your approach to the database migration is unconventional. Olivia's heart skipped. She'd spent hours developing that proposal, suggesting they maintain parallel systems during the transition, rather than the usual cut-and-switch method. I know it's not standard procedure, but it's brilliant, he interrupted. It minimizes downtime and reduces risk. The exact solution I was hoping someone would suggest. His praise warmed her chest, but before she could respond, Sophie materialized beside them. Anthony, I was hoping to catch you before the meetings. Sophie's voice was honey-sweet as she pointedly ignored Olivia. I've prepared a comprehensive overview of client concerns that I think you'll find fascinating. Olivia watched as Sophie not so subtly positioned herself between them, effectively pushing Anthony away from Olivia's desk. He straightened, maintaining his professional demeanor. Thank you, Ms. Carter. We'll discuss it during your scheduled time. His tone was polite but cooler than it had been moments before. Ms. Parker, I'll see you at 2. As he walked away, Sophie lingered. Oh, you didn't like the chocolates. They're from that little boutique on Fifth Avenue, very exclusive. I'm watching my sugar intake, Olivia replied evenly, but thank you for thinking of me. Sophie's smile tightened. Always looking out for my oldest friend. You know, Anthony and I had the most interesting conversation yesterday about leadership qualities. He values loyalty very highly. The threat was clear. Back off or face the consequences. But Olivia had worked too hard to let intimidation derail her. How fortunate that my loyalty to this project and company is unwavering, she responded, gathering her materials for the morning status meeting. Excuse me, I need to prepare for my presentation. The morning crawled by in a blur of meetings and email exchanges. Olivia noticed Sophie making frequent trips to Anthony's office, always managing to time her visits when others could see her. The office rumor mill was already churning. Sophie Carter had set her sights on the handsome CEO. At 1:55 p.m., Olivia knocked on Anthony's office door, arms full of documentation and a tablet loaded with presentations. Right on time, he smiled, helping her with some folders that threatened to slip. And completely awake, I see. I even brought my own pillow just in case, she joked, patting her laptop bag. The easy banter surprised her. Something about him made her forget professional hierarchies. His laugh was interrupted by Sophie bursting in. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were finished with meetings. She carried a single folder and what appeared to be 2 coffee cups. I brought your favorite, Anthony. Double espresso, 1 sugar. Olivia noticed the slight tightening around Anthony's eyes. Thank you, Ms. Carter, but I'm in the middle of a scheduled meeting with Ms. Parker. Of course, of course. Sophie backed toward the door, setting 1 coffee cup on his desk. We're still on for dinner though, right? To discuss the client. Presentation? The question hung in the air like smoke. Olivia busied herself with her tablets, pretending not to notice the way Sophie's eyes darted between them. As I mentioned yesterday, Ms. Carter, all project discussions should happen during business hours. Now, if you'll excuse us. Anthony's tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. After Sophie left, an awkward silence filled the office. Anthony picked up the coffee cup she'd left and dropped it directly into the trash. I make it a policy never to accept unmarked beverages in corporate settings, he explained, catching Olivia's questioning look. Now, shall we discuss your implementation timeline? The next hour flew by as they dove deep into technical specifications and integration challenges. Anthony proved to be not just knowledgeable but innovative, building on Olivia's ideas with insights that made her wish she could take notes fast enough. Your grasp of the system architecture is impressive, he commented, as their meeting wound down. Most people don't catch the nuances in the security protocols. I might have spent a few nights studying the documentation, she admitted. When something interests me, I can get a bit intense about learning it. Intense is good. Intense gets results. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Though I hope you're not planning any more all-nighters. I'd hate to have to install a pillow collection in the break room. The reminder of their first meeting brought color to her cheeks. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Would you want to? His question carried a weight that made her pulse quicken. Some of life's best moments come from its most embarrassing beginnings. Before Olivia could process the implications of his words, a knock at the door announced Regina's arrival. Mr. Clark, your 3:30 is here. Thank you. He stood, professional mask sliding back into place. Ms. Parker, excellent work on the timeline. I look forward to seeing the first phase implementation next week. As Olivia gathered her things, she could feel Regina's assessing gaze. She'd stayed exactly 1 hour. They'd discussed only work. Everything had been completely professional. So why did she feel like she'd just been caught doing something forbidden? Back at her desk, she found her email inbox flooded with meeting requests from Sophie, each marked urgent. A post-it note on her monitor read, "We need to talk about professional boundaries. Lunch tomorrow?" Olivia sent a single reply. Sorry, all my lunches are booked with implementation planning. Feel free to add any concerns to the project documentation. Let Sophie play her games. Olivia had worked too hard to let office politics derail her now. She had a system to implement, a career to build, and a CEO who believed in her capabilities, even if his smile sometimes made her forget what those capabilities were. 2 weeks into the system implementation, Olivia found herself in uncharted territory. The project was progressing smoothly, almost too smoothly, and that made her nervous. In her experience, calm waters often preceded the stormiest seas. She sat in the empty conference room late one evening, surrounded by testing reports and user feedback forms. The city lights twinkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a constellation of urban stars that had become her constant companions during these extended work sessions. I thought I'd find you here. Anthony's voice broke through her concentration. He stood in the doorway, suit jacket discarded, tie loosened. The cleaning crew said you've claimed this room as your second office. Third office, she corrected, pushing away from the table to stretch. My apartment is technically my second office these days. He crossed the room, picking up one of her meticulously annotated reports. These user feedback metrics are impressive. The transition is going better than expected. Too well, Olivia admitted. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Ah, the curse of competence. Anthony settled into the chair next to her, close enough that she could catch the faint scent of his cologne. Always expecting disaster because success feels too easy. Speaking from experience? Let's just say I didn't build Clark Tech by assuming things would work out. He turned to face her fully. But sometimes, Olivia, success isn't a trap. Sometimes you're just that good. The use of her first name sent an unexpected thrill through her. In the 2 weeks they'd worked together, he'd maintained strict professional formality in their interactions. This felt different, more personal. The team has been exceptional, she deflected, trying to ignore how the late hour and empty office made everything feel more intimate. Even Sophie's client relations reports have been thorough. Anthony's expression darkened slightly at the mention of Sophie. Yes, Ms. Carter is dedicated, though her methods of showing that dedication are somewhat concerning. You've noticed? Olivia asked before she could stop herself. The coffee deliveries, the accidental meetings in the hallway, the increasingly dramatic attempts to discuss project details over dinner. His tone was dry. I may be focused on business, but I'm not blind. Olivia tried to suppress a smile and failed. The entire office is taking bets on when you'll finally accept one of her dinner invitations. And what did you bet? That you'd rather eat alone in this conference room with these riveting user feedback reports. His laugh echoed through the empty space, rich and genuine. Well, I'm not alone, am I? The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Olivia's heart thundered in her chest as she met his gaze. The city lights cast shadows across his features, softening them, making him look less like a CEO and more like the kind stranger who'd let her sleep on his shoulder. A distant door slammed, breaking the spell. Olivia jumped slightly, suddenly aware of how close they'd drifted toward each other. I should go, she said quickly, gathering her papers. Early meeting tomorrow with the IT security team. Right. Anthony stood, helping her collect the scattered reports. About tomorrow, there's a client dinner I'm supposed to attend. Very formal, very boring, but necessary for the project. As technical lead, your presence would be valuable. Olivia's hand stilled. A client dinner? Completely professional, he added quickly. The entire leadership team will be there. Regina suggested I extend the invitation. That detail surprised her. Regina had been watching their interactions like a hawk, ready to pounce on any hint of impropriety. If she had suggested this, I'd be happy to attend, Olivia said carefully. What time? Car will pick you up at 7. He handed her the last of the reports. Wear something nice. These old money clients expect a show. The next morning, Olivia arrived early to find her desk surrounded by curious colleagues. In the center sat an enormous bouquet of roses, their deep red petals still dewy with morning moisture. Secret admirer? Melissa asked, eyeing the flowers with interest. Olivia's stomach clenched as she approached the arrangement. A small card nestled among the blooms read, Looking forward to dinner tonight, Sophie. The message was clear, a warning shot across her bow. Beautiful flowers, Regina commented, appearing beside her desk. Though perhaps not appropriate for the office. Her pointed look said volumes. They're not, Olivia started, but Regina had already moved on, leaving her with the overwhelming scent of roses and the curious whispers of her colleagues. She found Sophie in the break room methodically stirring cream into her coffee. Interesting delivery this morning, Olivia said quietly, ensuring they were alone. Sophie's smile was razor sharp. Aren't they lovely? I thought they'd add a nice touch of romance to the evening. You are attending the client dinner, aren't you? As technical lead, yes. Funny. Sophie tapped her spoon against the rim of her cup. That's not usually a role that requires attendance at these events. But then you've been requiring a lot of unusual things lately, haven't you? If you have concerns about my professional conduct, I'm happy to discuss them with Regina, Olivia offered, keeping her voice steady. Oh, sweetie. Sophie stepped closer, her perfume as overwhelming as the roses. Regina's not the one you should be worried about. Did you know the board takes fraternization very seriously, especially when it involves visiting executives? The threat hung between them like poison gas. Olivia squared her shoulders, meeting Sophie's gaze directly. Thank you for the flowers, Sophie. They'll look lovely on my mother's grave when I visit this weekend. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the marble floor in what she hoped was a confident rhythm. Back at her desk, she opened her laptop to find an email from Anthony. Security team meeting moved to 10 a.m. Bring the penetration testing results we discussed last night, and maybe some coffee. I hear the break room supply is suddenly missing. Despite everything, Sophie's threats, Regina's watchful eye, the whispers that seemed to follow her everywhere, Olivia found herself smiling. She had worked too hard. To let office politics derail her now. Let Sophie play her games. Tonight, Olivia would show everyone exactly why she was technical lead, and if her heart beat a little faster at the thought of seeing Anthony in a formal setting, well, that was just professional anticipation, right? The black cocktail dress had been an impulse purchase months ago, something Olivia had bought for an occasion she couldn't quite imagine at the time. Now, standing in front of her bedroom mirror, she was grateful for that moment of extravagance. The dress was perfect, professional enough for a client dinner but elegant enough to make her feel confident. Her phone buzzed with a text from the car service. Driver waiting outside. Gathering her clutch and a thin shawl against the spring. Evening chill. She took one final look in the mirror. Her dark curls were swept into an elegant updo, exposing the graceful line of her neck. Professional. Polished. Perfect. The car, a sleek black Lincoln, pulled up to Le Bernardin precisely at 7:30. Olivia's heart quickened as the driver opened. Her door. This wasn't just any client dinner. This was her chance to prove she belonged at the table with the decision-makers. Ms. Parker. Anthony's voice drew her attention to the restaurant entrance. He stood waiting, impeccable in a black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. You look... His pause was barely noticeable. Professional. Thank you, Mr. Clark. She matched his formal tone, though she couldn't help noticing how his eyes lingered on her dress. Are the others here? Just arriving. He offered his arm, naturally as if he'd done it 1,000 times. Shall we? The private dining room was a study in understated luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the gathered executives, their murmured conversations mixing with the soft clink of expensive glassware. Regina was already there, deep in discussion with two silver-haired men Olivia recognized from the board. Olivia, don't you look unexpected? Sophie's voice carried across the room. She wore a dramatic red gown that seemed more suited to a gala than a business dinner. I was just telling the Cromwell brothers about your fascinating technical approach to the implementation. Olivia felt Anthony's arm tense slightly under her hand before he smoothly guided her toward the group. The Cromwell brothers, Richard and Theodore, were major shareholders in both Henderson and Mitchell and several client companies. Their opinion could make or break careers. Ms. Parker, Richard Cromwell extended his hand. Sophie here tells us you're taking quite an unconventional approach to the system migration. Actually, Anthony interrupted, Ms. Parker's approach is revolutionizing how we handle large-scale implementations. The parallel system method she developed has already caught the attention of our R&D department. Theodore Cromwell's eyebrows rose. Is that so? Perhaps you could explain it to us, Ms. Parker. Olivia took a steadying breath and launched into her explanation, breaking down complex technical concepts into clear strategic advantages. She watched understanding dawn in the brothers' eyes, followed by genuine interest. Brilliant, Richard declared after she finished. Absolutely brilliant. And you developed this method yourself? She certainly had help, Sophie cut in smoothly. Our entire team has been working overtime to support her ideas. The core concept was entirely Ms. Parker's, Anthony stated firmly. In fact, a subtle cough from Regina interrupted him. Shall we be seated? I believe dinner is about to be served. The seating arrangement couldn't have been more strategic if it had been engineered by a supercomputer. Olivia found herself between Theodore Cromwell and Regina, directly across from Anthony, who was flanked by Sophie and Richard. Every conversation would be observed, every interaction noted. As the first course arrived, a delicate sea urchin, custard that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly rent, Sophie leaned toward Anthony with practiced intimacy. "You simply must try this wine, Anthony. It reminds me of that wonderful Bordeaux we discussed last week." "I don't recall that conversation, Ms. Carter." Anthony's tone was polite but distant as he turned to Richard Cromwell. "Richard, I'd love your thoughts on the Asian market expansion." Throughout dinner, Olivia focused on engaging Theodore in meaningful discussion about technology integration in traditional industries. She was in her element here, able to demonstrate her knowledge while learning from his decades of experience. She barely noticed the expertly prepared courses, too absorbed in the conversation. "I must say," Theodore commented during dessert, "it's refreshing to meet someone so passionate about both the technical and business aspects of implementation. Wouldn't you agree, Regina?" Regina's smile was carefully measured. "Ms. Parker has shown remarkable dedication to the project." "Dedication isn't the word I'd use," Sophie interjected, her voice carrying just enough edge to draw attention. "Obsession might be more accurate. All those late nights in the office, those private meetings." The table fell silent. Olivia felt heat rise in her cheeks, but before she could respond, Anthony spoke. "Speaking of dedication," his voice cut through the tension like a steel blade, "the board might be interested in hearing about Ms. Parker's innovative approach to data security during the transition. It's already saved the company significant resources." The conversation shifted, but Olivia caught Sophie's expression, a mixture of fury and calculation that sent a chill down her spine. She'd seen that look before, right before careers had been derailed by anonymous complaints to HR. As the evening wound down, Olivia excused herself to the ladies' room. She needed a moment to breathe, to gather her thoughts away from the watching eyes and political undercurrents. She was checking her lipstick when Sophie entered, her red dress like a wound in the elegant bathroom's neutral tones. "Quite a performance tonight," Sophie said, refreshing her own makeup. The brilliant young innovator, so passionate about her work. "Tell me, does Anthony appreciate your passion?" "This needs to stop, Sophie." Olivia turned to face her former friend. "The games, the innuendos, the threats, it's beneath both of us." "Beneath us?" Sophie's laugh was sharp. "Oh, honey, you have no idea what's beneath any of this. Did you really think they made you technical lead because of your skills? They needed someone young and pretty to keep Anthony interested in the project. Once he's gone, so is your position." "You're wrong." But a seed of doubt had been planted, poisonous and persistent. "Am I?" "Ask yourself why Regina really suggested you attend tonight. Watch how quickly things change when the project ends." Sophie's smile was almost pitying. "You're a prop, Olivia. A very effective one, I'll admit, but still just a prop." She left Olivia standing there, staring at her reflection in the elegant mirror. The confident woman from her bedroom seemed far away now, replaced by someone who looked too young, too uncertain, too. "Everything all right?" Anthony stood in the hallway when she emerged, his concern evident. "You were gone a while." "Fine," she managed, "just processing the evening." He studied her face for a moment. "Walk with me. The car won't be here for a few minutes." They stepped out onto the restaurant's terrace, the spring night wrapping around them like silk. The city stretched out below, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. "You were impressive tonight," he said quietly. "The Cromwells rarely show that much interest in technical details." "Sophie thinks I'm a prop." The words escaped before she could stop them. "That I'm only technical lead because of me?" His voice was gentle. "Olivia, look at me." She turned, finding his honey-colored eyes intense in the city light. "You got this position because you're brilliant, because you see solutions others miss, because you care about getting things right, not just looking right." He stepped closer. "Never let anyone make you doubt that." For a moment, the air between them crackled with possibility. Olivia could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the conflict in his eyes that probably mirrored her own. "Car's here." Regina's voice shattered the moment. She stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Parker, you'll want to review the notes from today's security meeting before tomorrow's presentation." "Of course." Olivia stepped back, professional mask sliding back into place. "Thank you for a lovely evening, Mr. Clark." But as the car pulled away from the curb, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Whether it was the ground beneath her feet or her heart within her chest, she wasn't quite sure, and she wasn't quite sure which scared her more. The morning after the client dinner dawned cold and gray, matching Olivia's mood as she stared at her computer screen. An email from HR marked confidential sat in her inbox like a ticking bomb. She didn't need to open it to know what it contained. Sophie's timing was nothing if not predictable. "Ms. Parker?" Regina's voice made her jump. "My office now." The walk to Regina's corner office felt like crossing. "I'm simply looking out for the company's best interests," Sophie replied smoothly. "As someone who's worked here for years, I couldn't stay silent about potential impropriety." "Interesting timing," Olivia found herself saying. "Right after the Cromwell brothers expressed interest in my implementation method, the same method you tried to take credit for last week." Sophie's perfect composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what you're—" "The email you sent to development claiming you'd collaborated extensively on the parallel system design?" Olivia pulled out her tablet. "I have that documented too, along with the original timestamps of when the method was first proposed. Would you like to see them, Mr. Cromwell?" Richard Cromwell's expression hardened. "I would, actually. Ted and I are very interested in intellectual property matters." "As am I." Regina's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, several board members behind her. "The board meeting has been moved up. Ms. Carter, your presence is required." The color drained from Sophie's face. I have a client call scheduled. Cancel it." Regina's tone left no room for argument. "Ms. Parker, Mr. Clark, please, join us as well." She turned to the gathered crowd. "The rest of you have work to do, I believe." The next 2 hours were among the most intense of Olivia's life. Every email, every meeting, every interaction was scrutinized. Sophie's carefully constructed narrative crumbled in the face of overwhelming documentation. When the security footage showed her attempting to enter Anthony's office after hours, her explanation grew increasingly desperate. "I was just trying to protect the company," Sophie finally burst out. Everyone could see what was happening: the special treatment, the private meetings. "The only special treatment," Theodore Cromwell interrupted, "was your repeated attempts to undermine a valuable project lead and harass our technical partner." He turned to Regina. "I believe we've seen enough." The board's decision was unanimous. Sophie was suspended pending an investigation, her access to project materials revoked immediately. As security escorted her from the building, she shot Olivia a look of pure venom. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll slip up eventually, and, when you do—" "Ms. Carter," Anthony's voice was cold. "I suggest you leave while you still have a shred of professional dignity." The office buzzed with excitement for the rest of the day, but Olivia barely noticed. She buried herself in work, trying to ignore the emotional aftermath of the morning's events. It wasn't until evening, when most people had left, that she finally allowed herself to breathe. "You okay?" Anthony asked softly, appearing at her desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Honestly, I don't know." She accepted the coffee gratefully. "It doesn't feel real yet." "You were amazing in there, the way you handled everything." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've never met anyone quite like you, Olivia Parker." The way he said her name made her heart skip. "I just did what I had to do." "No." He sat on the edge of her desk, his proximity sending warmth through her despite the office's evening chill. "You did what no one expected you could do. You stood your ground, protected your work, and showed everyone exactly why you're in this position." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air crackled with that same electricity from the restaurant terrace. But this time there was no Regina to interrupt, no Sophie to interfere. Just two people, a shared victory, and a future suddenly full of possibilities. "Thank you," Olivia said softly, "for believing in me." His smile held something more than professional admiration. Always. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the setting sun broke through the clouds, painting the office in shades of gold and promise. The storm had passed, but Olivia knew this was just the beginning. After all, they still had a system to implement. And maybe, just maybe, something else to explore once the professional boundaries weren't quite so necessary. The week following Sophie's dramatic exit transformed the office atmosphere. Gone was the suffocating tension, replaced by an almost giddy productivity. Olivia found herself thrust into an unexpected spotlight, the intern who had stood her ground, and won. It was flattering, uncomfortable, and terrifying all at once. "They're calling you the documentation queen in IT," Melissa informed her over morning coffee. "Apparently, everyone's started keeping detailed records now. You've started a revolution." Olivia laughed, stirring honey into her tea. "Is that better or worse than the subway sleeper?" "Oh, that one's still making the rounds too." Melissa grinned. "Though now it's more of a romantic epic, the tired intern who literally fell for the CEO." "Please stop," Olivia groaned, but she couldn't help smiling. The subway incident felt like it had happened in another lifetime to another person. "Speaking of our favorite CEO," Melissa nodded toward the entrance where Anthony had just walked in, deep in conversation with Theodore Cromwell. Since Sophie's departure, Anthony had maintained a careful professional distance. Their interactions were friendly but measured, each of them acutely aware of the scrutiny they were under. The spark between them hadn't diminished. If anything, it had intensified, but they both understood the importance of timing. "Olivia." Anthony's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Do you have a moment? Mr. Cromwell has some questions about expanding the implementation scope." They gathered in the main conference room where Theodore Cromwell spread out several documents across the table. "The board is impressed with the project's progress," he began. "So impressed that we're considering rolling out your implementation method across all our subsidiary companies." Olivia's heart skipped. "All of them? That's..." She did a quick, mental calculation. Over 30 different system integrations. 37, Anthony corrected softly, each with its own unique challenges and requirements. "We'd need to build a dedicated team," Olivia mused, her mind already racing through the possibilities. "Specialized training protocols, customized documentation for each industry sector." "Exactly why we need you to lead it," Theodore said. Olivia's head snapped up. "Lead it?" "We're creating a new division," Anthony explained, his eyes bright with something that looked like pride. "System Integration Solutions. The board wants you as Director of Implementation." The world seemed to tilt slightly. "Director? But I'm just an..." "If you say just an intern, I'm leaving," Theodore interrupted good-naturedly. "You've more than proven your capabilities. The question is, are you ready for this level of responsibility?" Olivia looked between the two men, her mind whirling. This was everything she'd worked for, everything she'd dreamed of. But something in Anthony's carefully neutral expression made her pause. "Would this affect the current project?" she asked carefully. "You'd need to transition to the new role immediately," Theodore confirmed. "Mr. Clark has agreed to extend his stay to ensure a smooth handover of the existing implementation." Extended his stay. The words echoed in Olivia's mind, carrying implications she wasn't ready to examine. "Can I have 24 hours to consider the offer?" Theodore smiled approvingly. "Take 48. This isn't a decision to rush." He gathered his documents. "I have another meeting, but Anthony can fill you in on the details." After he left, silence filled the conference room. Olivia stood, walking to the windows that overlooked the city. The morning sun painted Manhattan in shades of possibility and promise. "You knew about this," she said finally. "I recommended you for the position." Anthony moved to stand beside her. "The board just needed convincing that you were ready." And Sophie's complaint actually helped, Olivia realized. It showed them how I handle pressure. You did that all on your own. His voice was soft. I just pointed out what was already obvious to anyone paying attention. She turned to face him. If I take this position, everything changes, he finished. You'd be leading a division, managing major client relationships, traveling between subsidiaries, working closely with Clark Tech's CEO. A small smile played at his lips. Among others, but Olivia. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Don't make this decision based on complications that may or may not exist. Complications? She raised an eyebrow. Is that what we're calling this? This, he gestured between them, is something we haven't defined yet. Your career, on the other hand, is very clearly defined. Don't let one influence the other. Before she could respond, Regina appeared in the doorway. Quarterly review meeting in 5 minutes, Mr. Clark. Her tone was professional, but her eyes narrowed slightly at their proximity. We'll continue this discussion later, Anthony said, stepping back. Think about the opportunity, Olivia. Really think about what you want. What she wanted. As if it were that simple. As if her heart didn't race every time he said her name. As if she couldn't still feel the phantom warmth of his shoulder from that first morning on the subway. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and project updates. Olivia threw herself into work, trying to imagine herself in the director role. She stayed late, reviewing implementation documents with new eyes, seeing potential challenges and solutions she hadn't considered before. Still here? Anthony's voice startled her. He stood in her office doorway. She had an office now, a small but tangible symbol of her rising status. Just thinking. She leaned back in her chair. 37 companies, 37 chances to get it right or spectacularly wrong. 37 opportunities to innovate. He entered the office, leaving the door open. Always careful now, always aware of appearances. You know, when I started Clark Tech, everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced, that I should wait, learn more, play it safe. What did you do? I remembered something my father told me. Safety never made history. He smiled. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Their eyes met across the desk, and Olivia felt that familiar pull, that dangerous attraction that had started everything. What if I'm not ready? She whispered. What if you are? He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Before you decide, read this. It's a letter of recommendation I wrote for the board. Read it when you're alone, preferably with a good glass of wine. Mr. Clark? Regina's voice drifted in from the hallway. Your car is waiting. He straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. Good night, Ms. Parker. Whatever you decide, know that you've already proven yourself more capable than anyone expected. Olivia waited until she was home, curled up on her couch with a glass of red wine, before opening the letter. As she read, Anthony's words, his description of her intelligence, her innovation, her unwavering dedication, tears blurred her vision. The final paragraph stood out. In my years of business, I have never met anyone who so perfectly combines technical brilliance with genuine leadership potential. Ms. Parker doesn't just solve problems, she anticipates them. She doesn't just manage projects, she inspires teams. But most importantly, she doesn't just do her job, she revolutionizes it. The only question is whether we're brave enough to give her the opportunity she deserves. Olivia set down the letter, her heart full of something that felt like courage. Tomorrow she would give Theodore her answer. Tomorrow she would take the biggest risk of her career. But tonight, she allowed herself to dream of 37 new beginnings, and one complicated, wonderful possibility that had started with a simple subway ride. Morning found Olivia early at her desk, Anthony's letter carefully folded in her bag. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and what-ifs. The office was quiet, most employees not due for another hour, but she needed this time to center herself before making her announcement. You're here early. Regina's voice made her jump. Her supervisor stood in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. I thought we might talk. Olivia gestured to the chair across from her desk, accepting the offered coffee with surprise. In all her time at Henderson and Mitchell, she'd never seen Regina bring anyone coffee. Theodore told me about the offer, Regina said, settling into the chair. Have you made your decision? Yes. Olivia met her supervisor's eyes steadily. But I'd like to hear your thoughts first. Regina took a careful sip of her coffee. When you first started here, I thought you were like all the other bright young things, eager to prove yourself but ultimately unprepared for the real challenges of this industry. She paused. I was wrong. Coming from Regina, this was practically a declaration of undying devotion. Olivia waited, sensing there was more. The way you handled the Sophie situation showed judgment beyond your years. Your technical skills were never in question, but leadership, that's different. That's about character. Regina leaned forward. But it's also about timing. You're worried about Anthony, Olivia said quietly. I'm worried about perception. Regina's expression softened slightly. The attraction between you two isn't as subtle as you think. If you take this position now, some will say you earned it on your back rather than your merit. Like they said about you? Olivia ventured. Regina's eyebrows shot up. You've been doing your research. I found the articles about your early career, how they claimed you slept your way into partnership. Olivia met her mentor's gaze. But you didn't let it stop you. No. Regina smiled slightly. I didn't. I let my work speak for itself. Eventually the rumors died and the results remained. She stood, smoothing her impeccable suit. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for the right reasons. And Olivia? She paused at the door. I'm proud of you. Before Olivia could process this unprecedented show of support, her phone buzzed with a message from Theodore Cromwell's office. The board wanted her decision by noon. She spent the morning finalizing project documentation and preparing her response. Around 11, Anthony stopped by her office. No pressure, he said with a small smile. But the board's getting impatient. Actually, I was hoping to discuss something with you first. Olivia closed her office door, ignoring the curious glances from passing colleagues. The extension of your stay here is purely professional, he finished. The board needs me to oversee the expansion if you accept the position. And if I don't? Something flickered in his eyes. Then I return to Clark Tech headquarters next, week as planned. Olivia took a deep breath. There's something you should know before I give my answer. She pulled out a folder from her desk. I've been working on this for the past week. It's a proposal for remote implementation protocols. Anthony took the folder, scanning its contents with growing interest. This would allow for system integration without constant on-site presence. Exactly. The technical lead could oversee multiple implementations simultaneously, coordinating with local teams through structured virtual frameworks. She watched his expression carefully. It would make the process more efficient, more scalable, and less dependent on physical proximity, he finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. Olivia. I'm accepting the position, she said firmly. Not because of you, or us, or whatever this is between us. I'm accepting it because I'm ready, because I've earned it, and because I have ideas that could revolutionize how we handle system integration across industries. He studied her for a long moment, professional assessment warring with personal admiration. The board will want to review these protocols thoroughly. I know, and they should, because this isn't about finding ways around professional boundaries, it's about creating better, smarter ways to work. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. I want this position, Anthony, but I want to earn it completely on my own merit. A knock at the door interrupted whatever he was about to say. Theodore Cromwell entered, followed by several board members. Ms. Parker, Theodore smiled, we're eager to hear your decision. Olivia straightened, projecting confidence she wasn't entirely sure she felt. I accept the position, Mr. Cromwell, and I have some additional proposals for the board's consideration. The next hour passed in a blur of presentations and questions. Olivia defended her remote implementation protocols with the same passion she'd shown throughout the project. When she finished, the board members exchanged impressed looks. Innovative, Richard Cromwell nodded. But complex. You're suggesting a complete overhaul of traditional implementation methods. Traditional methods won't scale for 37 companies, Olivia replied. We need solutions as innovative as the technology we're implementing. And the logistics of remote oversight? Theodore pressed. The coordination between teams? That's where this comes in. Anthony spread out her proposal. Ms. Parker has designed a comprehensive framework for virtual team management. It's brilliant, actually. The potential cost savings alone. The discussion continued, growing more technical and excited. By the time the board members filed out, even the most skeptical among them seemed convinced. Well done, Theodore clapped her shoulder. We'll announce your promotion tomorrow. Take the rest of the day to get your affairs in order. After everyone left, Olivia sank into her chair, emotionally drained but exhilarated. Through her office window, she could see Anthony in the conference room, still reviewing her protocols with intense concentration. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the promotion. Don't get too comfortable. Sophie's bitterness radiated through the words. Olivia deleted the message without responding. She had bigger things to focus on now. Dinner? Anthony appeared in her doorway. To discuss the implementation timeline, of course, strictly professional. Of course, she smiled. Though maybe not at Le Bernardin this time. I was thinking somewhere less formal. There's a great pizza place near the subway station. His eyes twinkled. I hear they have very comfortable seating. Olivia laughed, gathering her things. As long as you don't mind if I fall asleep on your shoulder again. Ms. Parker, he said with mock seriousness, I believe that would be highly unprofessional. But as they walked toward the elevator, maintaining a careful distance between them, Olivia couldn't help but smile. She had faced down office politics, professional sabotage, and her own doubts. She had earned this position, and she would excel at it. And if her heart skipped a beat when Anthony's hand brushed hers in the elevator, well, that was just another challenge to master. After all, she had 37 companies to revolutionize. The rest could wait. 3 months into her role as Director of Implementation, Olivia stood before the board presenting the results of her first wave of system integrations. 10 companies had already completed the transition using her remote implementation protocols, each one more successful than the last. As you can see, she gestured to the projected statistics, efficiency rates have increased by 35% across all sectors. The virtual oversight framework has reduced travel costs by 60% while maintaining quality control standards. Pride swelled in her chest as she watched the board members nodding appreciatively. Even Regina, now promoted to senior vice president, looked impressed. Outstanding work, Ms. Parker, Theodore Cromwell beamed. Though I believe we have one more presentation to consider today. Olivia's heart stuttered as Anthony stood. Over the past months, they had maintained strict professionalism, their interaction limited to virtual meetings and carefully documented correspondence. Her remote implementation protocols had created the professional distance they needed, but they hadn't diminished the electricity that crackled between them during their rare in-person encounters. Thank you, Mr. Cromwell. Anthony moved to the front of the room. As you know, Clark Tech has been monitoring the success of Ms. Parker's implementation strategy. Today I'm here to propose an expansion of our partnership. He clicked to a new slide, and Olivia's breath caught. On the screen was a proposal for a joint venture between Henderson and Mitchell and Clark Tech, a new company focused entirely on system integration and implementation. The market potential is enormous, Anthony continued. Ms. Parker's protocols have revolutionized how we approach large-scale implementations. By combining Henderson and Mitchell's consulting expertise with Clark Tech's technology, we could transform the entire industry. The boardroom erupted in excited discussion. Olivia sat silent, her mind racing. A joint venture would mean her phone buzzed with a news alert. Her blood ran cold as she read the headline, Former H&M employee files lawsuit, alleges discrimination and harassment. Sophie's revenge had finally arrived. "Miss Parker?" Richard Cromwell's voice pulled her attention back to the room. "You look concerned. Do you have reservations about the joint venture?" Before she could respond, Regina's assistant burst in. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing. The press is in the lobby." The next hour passed in a blur of crisis management. Sophie's lawsuit named both Olivia and Anthony specifically, claiming their inappropriate relationship had led to her wrongful termination. The story was already spreading through social media, with anonymous sources providing evidence of misconduct. "This is my fault," Olivia said quietly, standing in Regina's office after the board dispersed. "I should have seen this coming." "No." Anthony's voice was firm. He closed the office door, ignoring protocol for the first time in months. "Sophie made her choices. She's trying to destroy something innovative and important because of personal vendettas. The joint venture is still on the table." Regina interrupted, surprising them both. "The board has reviewed Ms. Carter's claims. They're baseless, and we have the documentation to prove it." She fixed them both with a stern look. "However, perception matters. We need to handle this carefully." A knock at the door revealed Theodore Cromwell. "I just got off the phone with our PR team. They suggest we move up the announcement of the joint venture. Frame it as a revolutionary business partnership first, before Sophie's narrative can take hold." "But the press will still question," Olivia began. "Let them question." Anthony stepped closer, professional distance forgotten in the heat of the moment. "Your work speaks for itself, Olivia. 10 successful implementations. 37 companies in the pipeline. Millions in cost savings, that's the real story." "He's right," Regina nodded. "But we need to address the personal allegations head on. No hiding, no deflecting." "I have an idea," Olivia said slowly, a plan forming in her mind. "But it's risky. It could either save everything or destroy it completely." The others listened, as she outlined her strategy. When she finished, silence filled the office. "It's bold," Theodore finally said, "using complete transparency as a weapon against scandal." "It's more than that." Anthony's eyes held a mixture of admiration and something deeper. "It's turning a potential crisis into an opportunity for industry-wide change." Regina studied Olivia thoughtfully. "You understand what you're risking? Your reputation, your career?" "My reputation is built on innovation and integrity," Olivia interrupted. "This plan stays true to both." "The board will need to approve," Theodore began. "No time," Regina cut in. "The press is already running with Sophie's version. We need to move now." She turned to Olivia. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Olivia met Anthony's gaze, finding in his eyes the same determination she felt. "Yes." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. PR teams were mobilized, statements drafted, documentation compiled. By late afternoon, everything was ready. Olivia stood in her office preparing for what would be the most important presentation of her career. Not to the board this time, but to the media. She would lay out everything: the subway meeting, Sophie's harassment, the documentation that proved her professional rise was based on merit, not manipulation. "Ready?" Anthony appeared in her doorway, looking as nervous as she felt. "Almost." She smoothed her blazer, checking her reflection in the window. "Did you see Sophie's latest statement? About our clandestine meetings in the conference room?" He stepped inside, closing the door. "I particularly enjoyed the part about secret love notes disguised as implementation protocols." Despite everything, Olivia laughed. If only she knew how many hours we actually spent discussing database migration strategies. Some might call that romantic. Some might call it professionally dedicated. Their eyes met, and for a moment, all the carefully maintained distance of the past months evaporated. They stood close. Too close for colleagues, not close enough for everything left unsaid between them. "Olivia," he began, his voice low. "After this is over, Ms. Parker," Regina's assistant called through the door. "They're ready for you, in the press room." Reality crashed back in. Olivia straightened, professional mask sliding into place. Time to face the music. Together, Anthony said quietly. She nodded, gathering her courage. Together. As they walked toward the press room, Olivia's phone buzzed one final time. Another message from Sophie. Hope you're ready for your close-up, sweetie. Some stories can't be documented away. Olivia smiled, slipping the phone into her pocket. Sophie was wrong. Some stories deserve to be documented, shared, and celebrated, not just for their endings, but for every complicated, beautiful step along the way. And this story was just reaching its most important chapter. The press room buzzed with anticipation as cameras flashed and reporters whispered among themselves. Olivia stood at the podium, her documentation spread before her like armor. Anthony sat with the board members behind her, a united front against the storm of speculation. Good afternoon, Olivia began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You're all here because of allegations made by a former employee about impropriety and favoritism at Henderson and Mitchell. I'm here to address those allegations with complete transparency. She pulled up the first slide, a photo of her sleeping on Anthony's shoulder in the subway. Gasps and hurried whispers filled the room. Yes, this is real. This was my first meeting with Anthony Clark, though I didn't know it at the time. I was an intern who had worked through the night preparing implementation analysis. He was a stranger, kind enough not to push away an exhausted young professional. The next slides detailed her career progression, backed by timestamps, documentation, and witness statements. She walked through every promotion, every achievement, every milestone, including Sophie's campaign of harassment. The story Ms. Carter wants to tell you is one of scandal and impropriety. The real story is about innovation, perseverance, and the importance of maintaining professional integrity, even when faced with personal attacks. She clicked to the final slide, the joint venture proposal. Today, I'm not just defending my reputation. I'm announcing a revolutionary partnership between Henderson and Mitchell and Clark Tech Solutions. A partnership built on demonstrated success, technological innovation, and yes, professional relationships that have been documented and scrutinized at every step. The room erupted with questions. Olivia handled each one with calm precision, referring to specific documents and dates that supported her narrative. When asked about her relationship with Anthony, she was direct. Mr. Clark and I maintain a strictly professional relationship, one that has produced groundbreaking advances in system implementation. Any speculation about personal matters is a deliberate attempt to undermine the achievements of countless professionals who have worked on this project. From the back of the room came a familiar voice. And we're supposed to believe that all those late-night meetings were purely professional? Sophie stood, designer suit impeccable, face set in a practiced expression of concern. A hushed tension fell over the room. Olivia smiled. Actually, Ms. Carter, I'm glad you're here. Would you like to explain these? She gestured to her assistant, who distributed packets to the media. These are security recordings and email transcripts documenting your systematic harassment of multiple employees, including your attempts to compromise Mr. Clark and sabotage the implementation project. Color drained from Sophie's face as reporters began flipping through the evidence. Her lawyer, sitting beside her, looked increasingly uncomfortable. The truth is, Olivia continued, this lawsuit isn't about discrimination or impropriety. It's about someone who couldn't accept that success comes from hard work, not manipulation. The board has approved the release of all documentation related to your termination. Would you like to discuss that as well? Sophie stood abruptly, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. They left quickly, pursued by cameras and questions. Any other questions? Olivia asked the remaining reporters. A forest of hands shot up. For the next hour, she detailed the joint venture's plans, the success of her implementation protocols, and the future of system integration technology. By the time the press conference ended, the narrative had shifted completely. Cadence, already changing from scandal to innovation. Regina met her as she left the podium. Perfectly handled. The board is impressed again. As they should be, Theodore Cromwell added, joining them. The joint venture announcement is already generating massive interest. We've received calls from 20 new potential clients. Olivia accepted their congratulations, but her eyes sought Anthony. He stood by the window watching the media vans depart below. When she approached, he turned with an unreadable expression. "That was either the bravest or craziest press conference I've ever seen," he said quietly. "Maybe both?" She smiled tentatively. "I'm sorry if I overstepped with the joint venture announcement. Olivia." He stepped closer, professional distance finally, deliberately crossed. "You just turned a potential scandal into a business triumph. You protected both our reputations while launching a groundbreaking partnership. You were magnificent." Before she could respond, Regina cleared her throat behind them. "The board wants to discuss next steps, but first," she handed Olivia an envelope. "Sophie's lawyer delivered this. They're dropping the lawsuit and requesting a quiet settlement." "No." Olivia's voice was firm. "No settlements, no silence, everything stays documented, everything stays transparent." Regina smiled. "I hoped you'd say that. Conference room in 10 minutes." After she left, Olivia and Anthony stood in comfortable silence watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of possibility. "You know," he said finally, "now that the joint venture is public and all the documentation is filed, now that everything's official and above board," she continued, "I was thinking about that first subway ride." He turned to face her fully. "How sometimes the best things in life start with a completely unprofessional moment of human connection." Olivia's heart raced. "Mr. Clark, are you suggesting we revisit that unprofessional moment?" "Actually," he smiled, reaching for her hand, "I'm suggesting we create a new moment, one that doesn't need documentation or approval. Just us." "Just us," she echoed, twining her fingers with his. "I think I'd like that." "Conference room," Regina's voice carried from the hallway. 5 minutes." They stepped apart, laughing. Some things would never change. The deadlines, the meetings, the constant push toward innovation. But other things were just beginning. "Dinner tonight?" Anthony asked as they walked toward the conference room. "I know a great subway car with very comfortable seating." Olivia grinned. "Only if you promise to wake me if I fall asleep this time." "Ms. Parker," he said solemnly, though his eyes danced with joy, "I can assure you that staying awake will not be a problem." As they entered the conference room, greeted by smiling board members and stacks of joint venture documentation, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness. She had faced down every challenge, professional and personal, with integrity and innovation. She had turned an embarrassing moment into a life-changing opportunity. And now, finally, she was exactly where she was meant to be, leading a revolutionary business partnership with the man who had been her unwitting pillow, her greatest supporter, and soon something even more important. Some love stories started with grand gestures. Hers had started with a subway ride, grown through documentation, and bloomed in the face of adversity. It wasn't conventional, but then again, neither was she. And that had made all the difference. If you found yourself in Olivia's shoes, would you risk a blossoming romance and potential career advancement for the sake of professional boundaries? Or would you follow your heart despite the workplace challenges? What would you have done differently in her position when faced with Sophie's sabotage attempts? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.